everybody, and welcome here today to another Kerfuffle Showcase. And I am delighted to have with me today Aaron from Propcall. Aaron, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very good. I noticed, as you said off screen, you are down one pink hat. I will make sure that the powers that be beat our merch logistics people to death. But apologies about that. But anyway, you're looking very serious as of course your service offers, doesn't it? It's a very serious service, so we don't want to make light of that. Just so people understand, as I understand it when we had our conversations as well before, essentially Propcall offers an out of hours call answering service, doesn't it, for property management? That's the key angle that you guys are able to help agents out with. Yeah,
so our job really is to sort of be an extension of the teams we work for. So, you know, answering services themselves, there's plenty of them out there, and you know there's certain processes they can all follow. Where we're a little bit different is we're a sort of an extension of the business that we work for, and quite unique and bespoke in what we do. But in a nutshell, what we are is a specialised out of hours answering service with a property management background and a team full of property managers.
Cool. And just to be clear there, so you're not really just taking the call, are you? You're adding more, as we'll go into here. You are doing much more around the service to make sure that you're delivering value back for those agents.
Yeah, our job really is to sort of spread that workload. So if we can resolve something over the phone or over a video call with the tenant, to sort of, you know, in the case of a boiler, for example, a boiler breakdown, fix that over the phone. So that the estate agent comes in the next day and they've not got to play whack-a-mole with all the issues from the night before. Fantastic, that's our job done. But equally, you know, there's sort of capturing those messages that come through out of hours that you wouldn't want to miss. You know, valuation leads, inquiries, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Well, I always like to throw in a really interesting fact right at the start, because people see me on these things straight away, and I need to keep their attention before they doze off. So let's hit them with one that I asked you for, a standout kind of fact or feature there. And one of the things that really took my attention was you made the point that the reduction of a single emergency call out per week could save estate agents and their clients over £10,000 per annum in unnecessary costs. That's quite a punchy statement, isn't it? It's quite telling as well how important this is to get it right.
Yeah, it's a big chunk, and obviously estate agents aren't always spending their own money; they're spending clients' money, and you know, clients are not going to be happy if you can't justify the spend. In terms of, you know, being very clear as to why something was an emergency call out. I'd say probably 90% of the calls we get, you know, the tenant thinks it's an emergency and needs to call out.
Of course,
but, you know, with a bit of property management experience and a bit of nous, it definitely doesn't, and can either be resolved or managed without having to spend 200 to 250 quid on an emergency attendance. So yeah, there's a big cost saving there. You know, there's a lot of agents we know that, you know, in certain circumstances have ended up covering the costs of call outs themselves because they're not convinced they can justify stuff to landlords. Well, our job is to stop that happening.
So this is this is a really challenging area as well, isn't it? I mean, this can get very serious, very contentious quite quickly. So I suppose my first question as an origin story is, why would you possibly have chosen this? Is it just because you saw that there's a real opportunity there if you do this right to create a niche?
Yeah, it kind of happened through almost an accidental conversation over a pint.
Well, that's where all the best ones. Give us the background then. How did it happen?
Yeah, so a close friend of mine runs a student lettings business. Was having some significant issues with, you know, they've got about 15 sites. Having some significant issues with the sort of HR and employment law aspect of having student ambassadors on site, you know, property managers not answering calls after hours. They tried various other services. None of them could sort of accommodate the niche processes that they have and the sort of duty of care that they have. It was very much kind of answering service style stuff where they'd get an email to say, oh, this has happened and we've not been able to do anything about it. So pick this up in the morning. So my background wasn't property, I was in telecoms, and I've done sort of commercial sales management before that. So without having a sort of property head, I sort of accidentally spewed out solutions to a problem, and before you know it, you know, a couple of weeks later I somehow built a business plan, sort of a skeleton business plan, nothing perfect, but again, it was never really done with any serious intention, although the idea, kept becoming frequently in my head, and I'm thinking it's a really good idea. Myself and my wife were actually due to head out to Australia, potentially to do a year's traveling. She's been badgering me about it for ages, and we'd kind of come to a really nice position where, we had the money, I was in quite a comfortable job, and wasn't really overly sort of committed to it in that sense. Always wanted to work for myself. And then, 2 days before we went out there to do the sort of test run, so to speak, the first couple of weeks, COVID kicks in, borders get shut. And if you know anything about Australia, they don't open their borders lightly at the best of times.
No, I was on, I think, the second last flight out of Melbourne, because I was at risk of being kind of missing the last chopper out of Saigon when I was over there. When they shut them down, they shut them down hard, don't they? Well, that's an interesting sliding stores moment there. So a nice story though. Business started off the back of something obviously terrible and everything else, but that's funny how these things work out in these ways, isn't it? So let's talk about it, because actually you touched on a couple of points there, really. And the title of this webinar was going to be the importance of a work-life balance and how to get it. Talk to us about what the pain point is that this solution, offers to solve. What's the day-to-day reality for many of the agents out there?
Well, interesting. Yeah, when I first started this, in my head, it was all about, reducing call outs and, sort of improving efficiencies and all that stuff. But actually the one thing that's really sort of stood out as soon as we went out to market, the biggest bit of feedback we've always had is about the difference in work-life balance. So, especially in sort of owner-led estate agents, you tend to find that, if the teams are quite small, then the owners will take it upon themselves to be that person that deals with everything out of hours. And as those teams grow, maybe they'll sort of, apply it to some of the employees as part of their role. But that duty of care is quite difficult to deliver on 24 hours a day. We're all only human. Sometimes you might take the emergency mobile home and you're in the shower and you've missed a call. Or two calls come in at once. It's like buses. You wait all day for one and then two come in at the same time.
Yeah, never.
And I've heard tales of we've had a lot of customers come to us who have experienced something drastic that has just been a recurrent issue that's finally sort of, straw that broke the camel's back. So, typically a call won't come in at, 5:05 on a Wednesday when you're just about to leave the office. It'll come in at 7:30 on a Friday night when you're about to go to a friend's birthday party, or middle of a Saturday at a wedding. So it's that constantly being on that we take away. And I think that the feedback
not being able to turn off. Even if the call doesn't come in, you're always very conscious, aren't you, that that's ready, like the sword of Damocles waiting to come down on you.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you raised, because I run a 24-hour business, so as you can imagine, I find it very difficult to switch off. The irony is, my business provides a work-life balance for everyone but me, but that's mainly because I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it is that it gives you the choice. Most business owners do struggle to switch off and always want to know. And again, a big part of the way we've built this and the way I've put it together is that you're always kept in the loop. So if you are the type of person like me who, sits looking at emails all day, even if it's 9:30 at night and you're watching the TV, you're always kept in the loop, so you can always see what's going on. But actually, if you want to put that work phone in a drawer and switch off, you don't have to worry, because somebody who knows what they're doing and is following your processes and your procedures to the letter, but also then has enough property management experience to know that something that might fall outside of the normal process happens, will be able to pick it up and deal with it properly. It's really reassuring. And some of the stories we hear back from agents we work with about Christmas Eve with the kids, and they get an email about a boiler breakdown and they're just like, I love you guys. Or weddings that they've not had to worry about looking at their phone for, they could just go and enjoy it. It's probably the most fulfilling thing for me.
That's really good to hear. So give us just an idea again, what are the three main USPs that you're able to offer for the agents?
So I guess the key thing is the work-life balance, and then the reduced contractor spend is quite a big one. When you look at reducing the number of unnecessary contractor call-outs, I think that's arguably what we started with as a focus, and it's become sort of a secondary thing, but it's still hugely important. The other thing, depending on how you use the service, because I'll talk a lot about the maintenance side and I'll talk a lot about the the customer service aspect, but actually one of the other huge areas is never missing an inquiry. So to have somebody there who is a part of your team, answers in your team's style in whatever way you wish, having someone there to answer the call means that you're not going to miss any of those important inquiries. And there's I talk about this quite a lot, but there's a stat that says 80% of people don't leave voicemails.
No.
It's a Forbes published stat, which I actually learned from a previous business in the telecoms world. And I'm a prime example. So when I was buying my house last year, sort of talking April, May, I'm looking around for properties, and I would call agents at the end of my working day, which might be 6:30, 7 o'clock, get through to voicemail, hang up, get through to voicemail, hang up. The only person, if it's not in a business context, the only person I know that leaves a voicemail is my dad. It's just become quite, I guess, old-fashioned to leave voicemails when you're making an inquiry. You just move on to the next one. So I would get to the end of a week of searching for properties and would get a, so babe, have you booked a viewing at that property that we liked? And it'd be like, oh, can't remember. No, I'm not sure. 50% of the time might fill out the inquiry form. But there's always going to be that few times where actually I've forgotten to fill out the form, thought I'd already filled it out, chanced it, didn't quite get there. But by the time that agent has called me back from a missed call or gotten back to me in any form, I've already booked in 3 or 4 viewings at other properties.
So this isn't just about efficiencies over existing businesses you've already got. This is about, again, making sure that you're touching it, you're keeping in touch with all of the people that are obviously looking for new business as well.
Yeah, and if you think about the amount of times agents will have calls from somebody with a portfolio landlord, for example, who's calling at 8 o'clock at night on a Thursday. It's that one appraisal or valuation lead makes it all worthwhile. If we can't get you,
which is a lovely way of positioning it without saying you just need one more listing to pay for this, which is what the rest of us do. But anyway, so there's a couple of things that jump out there. So first of all, I take it from what you're saying then that essentially you kind of white label this back to the agent themselves. If they want to, it can be Acme. This is Acme Estate Agents. How can we help you? That's a nice critical point. And does every agent take you up on that, or do some of them keep it? Are they quite happy to keep it as Propcall answering it as a specialised service?
Probably have, and it's interesting you raise that because it's only been probably the last 2 or 3 months that we've had agents who are very clear on, no, we want you to answer as Propcall on behalf of ABC Lettings. Most of them were very sort of careful with how we answer because we want it to reflect what that company wants from us. So if they just want us to be an extension of their team, grab inquiries for them as well as dealing with maintenance, we just answer as that business in the same way they would through the day. Some businesses only want us to focus on, the maintenance side. And in order to reduce the call volumes, because, my job is to help them reduce their usage. I wouldn't want a customer overpaying for stuff for the sake of it. So we've worked out ways to answer as, ABC Estates emergency line, how can I help? Or, ABC Estates out of hours, how can I help? Which then just sets the tone for the rest of that call and stops people, if you don't want to take general inquiries after hours, it just stops that process happening.
Wonderful. And then the second thing there as well is you have the ability, do you then as well, to, it can either be the agent's own contractors and suppliers, or if you're able to, it can be yours as well that you've worked with and kind of know and trust. Is that right? So they can
so we have a few layers of contractors. So the first one is always the preferred suppliers of the agents we're working for. We're an extension of their team. Therefore, we want to, keep all that business within the partners that they've chosen to work with and they trust and will probably know the properties. They'll have much better invoicing processes. And for me, then, when I started this company, one of my first thoughts was, I never want to be incentivized to send contractors. For me, if we're incentivized to send contractors, then there's always going to be a doubt in somebody's mind as to why we've sent a contractor. So the next layer of contractors we have are usually suppliers we've worked with closely with other agents. And we work with them to say, look, normally we call you on behalf of ABC, we're actually calling on behalf of XYZ. Can you go out and do this work? And thereby we'll make a direct introduction for you so that you can start to work with that agent. So the contractors love working with us because obviously they're either working for the client they know or they're getting an introduction. but it also keeps everything quite above board. Yes, occasionally if a contractor won't invoice the client directly because we're instructing them, we'll cover the invoice and just recharge it to the client. But for me, yeah, we've always got sort of layers upon layers of backup contractors in place for a client, so that on the one occasion we call their plumber at 3 in the morning on a Saturday and he's had a few beers and he can't go, we've got them covered and we've got someone who can get there when they need to.
Perfect. And you've got a really innovative video call kind of service as well. Do you want to just talk us around that?
Yeah, it's funny actually, because the video tool came about. I was approached on LinkedIn by a company who, sort of mass sent out LinkedIn messages to everyone about this particular piece of software, and I sat thinking about it for a couple of days, and I'm like, hang on, that if we can use that in the right way, surely that's an absolute game changer. And lo and behold, it is. What happens is, if a tenant calls us up with a maintenance problem that, rather than play 21 questions with them and, ask their opinion on how severe a leak is or how big a problem is or how big the patch is.
And they have no barometer, do they, to compare against stuff as well?
No, you've got to be empathetic. They're not property people. I know when I was, a student, for example, a drip through my ceiling it was going to cave in 2 hours. Yeah. And now, years of experience in the property side, that'll last a few days before it even so much as stains. So, being empathetic, but also then taking out some of that guesswork. What we've done is we've now got this video tool that we send the caller a text message while they're on the phone to us. They click a link. It opens up on their web browser, so they don't have to download an application or anything. It's nothing complicated at all. Bit like a Zoom call, then they press, accept video, and then they can literally show us around on their phone what's going on. So we've got full eyes on site as if we've walked into that property and had a look at it. Then at that point, we can take pictures, we can pause the screen, we can annotate on the screen, we can, great example of when we use this is to troubleshoot boiler issues. If somebody calls up and says, oh, my hot water's gone off or my heating's gone off. It's the middle of winter. I can't wait until tomorrow for someone to come and have a look at it. Okay, let's jump on a video call and take a look. And as any agent will know, 99% of the time, it's the pressure. The pressure's too low, the boiler's cut out because the pressure's too low. So we'll go through basic troubleshooting with them, using the manuals for the particular boiler. And we'll have a look on the screen, we'll see the pressure gauge is low, we'll pause it and we'll show them exactly which dial to turn, exactly which valve to open, and talk them through the exact process of how to top it up and when to stop it.
Cool, yeah.
At that point, then, 85% of boiler calls we can actually resolve with a video call, which is higher than I thought it would be. And it's that in itself is saving contractor call outs or even just saving that call at 9 a.m. the next day with a really angry tenant who's had no heating and hot water and had to shower the kids in cold water or whatever. It stops that takes away that problem with customer service where you then start to get 1-star reviews because you've ignored them for 4 hours or whatever. Everyone goes away happy. Agents happy they've not been disturbed. Tenants happy they've got heating and hot water. We've done everything safely because we've done it over a video call, so we can see exactly what's going on. You would not believe the amount of times we do video calls with electrics and we say, have you flicked all the switches back up? And they say yes, and then we look and the first one down on the left is down. But again, we do everything safely.
Catches those issues out as well. Yes, it's a really innovative use of doing it. And Aaron, you're MD of the company, so it's got to be there's a delicate balancing act though, isn't it? Because between you doing the right thing by the agents so that you're not obviously wasting their money and the landlord's money, but also as well not being overly sort of obstructive to the tenant as well. So how do you find that middle ground? And do the agents themselves give you any kind of influence over that? Would they say, look, if it comes down to it on XYZ, defer to the side of customer service? How do you reconcile all that with the different clients you've got?
So without processes in place, if we've not been given clear instruction, we would err on the side of caution. But we have typically, when it comes to a contractor call out, we have 3 main triggers. So the first one is threat to asset. Yep. So obviously if the cost of the contractor is going to be less than the cost of the potential damage, then we can very easily justify that one. Right. Threat to health and safety. And again, that's quite a subjective one. What some agents think is the threat to health and safety can sometimes be a little bit different. But again, we'd always err on the side of caution because the third one is threat to reputation. So very, very conscious that a business is handing their entire reputation to us out of hours. So, you know, we set the highest standards in what we do because we're representing that business. And it's funny, actually, I had a client recently say to me, Aaron, working with you guys has caused us a huge problem. And I was like, whoa, talk to me. And he's like, no, it's a good problem. You guys are that good out of hours that people are waiting until it's out of hours to call up and get things done because we're not answering the calls.
Yeah, so unintended consequences, that's called, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So lo and behold, we're now an offsite reception for them through the day as well. Again, we do that for the property sector with sort of supporting with overflow calls when, you know, there's particular spikes in usage and whatnot, or just like an offsite reception guiding people to the right person. But yeah, just, you know, we work with the client to understand their processes first. So we have some clients who are so loose with spend you wouldn't believe. They just, you know, student lettings are a particular one. You know, there's quite high margins in it, and the students are quite needy, and they expect to send contractors out quite a lot. So lo and behold, it's very much a case of I just send them out. Whereas with, you know, residential lettings, for example, it's, you know, the margins are a lot tighter. You know, landlords are being penalised constantly with all sorts of tax issues. So actually, the onus is to try and reduce those call outs where possible, and sort of manage things till the next working day, not for an unreasonable period, but just till the next working day when a contractor might be half the cost. Yeah,
but the important thing I'm taking from this is you're almost treating every pound that goes out of that agent's accounts and landlord's accounts as your own, isn't it? You're really looking after that and watching their backs.
Yeah, if I couldn't justify it, if I couldn't sit there with the client and say, yeah, 100% I justify this, I'd be concerned as to why we've sent someone. There's always going to be grey areas. There's always going to be, you know, we had to make a subjective judgment call on this. You know, property management isn't the kind of thing you can just flow chart everything. We've tried, believe me, when I first started the business, I tried to put together flow charts for every type of leak and every type of boiler breakdown. And then Josh, who's our operations manager now, he was call handler when we first started. And yeah, the first call that came in about a leak didn't fit any of those flow charts. So there's always going to be subjective calls that you make, but, you know, we work closely to understand the priorities of the agents we're working with, and, you know, we're quite protective of their interests, while still making sure we're looking after the tenant in the best possible way.
Cool, that's really, really good. And look, it's obviously working, because I think you were saying before you've grown from 6 staff to 28 in less than 2 years. So you're getting the validation, aren't you? That's the key point.
Yeah. Blink and you miss it type stuff. I mean, you can see behind me, we've got an office full of people now. When we officially went live in November 2020, it was me and 5 staff on a one-off rotation. I was doing the 9 to 5, and then the staff would come in and do the sort of out of hours call handling for one client. Spent the first 3 months making sure the service was fit for market and that I believed in it, because I would never sell something I don't believe in. Case in point, all the suppliers for this business are people that I've worked for before. So yeah, it's quite nice that we've grown so quickly, and a lot of that has come through client referrals and, you know, sort of people recommending us. You know, things like Facebook groups, for example, people have gone in and said, you know, does anyone know an answering service that can help my agent? And then before you know it, there's 4 or 5 people saying, yeah, you need to have a chat with Propcall.
Well, of course, that's how we met. One of those very happy clients said, look, you've got to speak to those guys. They're really working for me. And that's always, when you've got that word of mouth thing going on, that's really quite powerful there. And you mentioned that, I mean, the team behind you. Just give us flavour. What do you look for when you're recruiting somebody? Do they have to be ex property managers, ex agents? Are you just looking for that classic, the attitude, and you're willing to train on skill kind of approach?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. And my biggest concern, I guess, when I first started it, was people is going to be the biggest challenge. Why has nobody done this before?
Yeah, and it's probably that's always the problem, isn't it? You think there's an amazing idea here, but you're looking around thinking, hang on, there's got to be a reason why it hasn't been done.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm still looking for that. I'm still looking for the problem. I'm sat here going, what have I missed?
Well, if you're at 300 people in 2 years' time, you'll know that there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I might settle it down then. But yeah, I think people for me was always a big concern when I first opened it. The office was chosen very specifically with people in mind. So we've got an office in Old Trafford, which is, you know, close to motorway links, close to public transport links, got parking on site. So it's really well located for growth and, you know, within reach of the city centre. when we first took on the first 5 staff, they all had to have, relevant property management experience. For context, one of our nighttime senior property managers has got 30 years of facilities management experience. He just loves working nights. I cannot fathom how I found this man. 30 years facilities management experience, just loves working nights. And again, you look at the wider team. So when we first started taking on property managers, they had to either, have their own properties they manage or have worked in property management. As we've grown, what I've tried to do, I'm a big believer in sort of upskilling people.
Yeah.
So there's now almost what you consider sort of 2 layers to the operation in terms of the types of staff that we hire. So we are looking for people with the right mentality and the right sort of attitudes that we can then upskill. So they'll begin their journey by, capturing inquiries on behalf of clients. And then we'll upskill them on things like video triage. And then any decisions in terms of, making a judgment call on behalf of a client is actually then referred to the property managers within the office. So they're always gaining that experience and they're always being upskilled without being solely dependent on, what you would consider assistant property managers in making those judgment calls without sort of verifying that with the team.
Great stuff. You didn't use it earlier, but I like video triage. That's a wonderful phrase there. I hate to get all grubby, but that's kind of my role and responsibility here. Give us an idea of the cost, and also as well, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, do you have a photo fit perfect sort of client, or is it genuinely across as long as obviously anyone's on the letting side of things? Talk to us about the price and who should be using this service from the agency side of things.
So it's an interesting one. When I first started, it was, in my head it was, well, you just do it on a per property basis, a set fee per property, and off you go, happy as Larry. And then I quickly realized that doesn't really fit in the residential letting side. It's, the costs aren't being passed back to the landlord. This is very much the costs are being borne by the agents. And, you can have a portfolio of 500 properties that has less calls than a portfolio of 120. We've got plenty of examples of that with clients we work with, the different types of tenants, the different areas they're in.
Understood.
So the way I've structured the cost is actually very much in line with what you would consider a typical answering service. It's a small retainer per month where you buy a certain number of minutes in advance.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's quite a relaxed way of structuring it, because it means that if you're a small business, you pay quite a small fee. Yeah. To give you a ballpark, you're probably looking just over 100 quid a month for a small agent.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds here just to get using the service itself. It's not a huge investment at all. And it's funny actually. There's a client we've got down in Swindon, and he'll know when he sees this. I'm talking about him. We engaged with him in December, and he was asking the sort of pricing, and had a chat with him, and we're quite relaxed about the contractual term in terms of that first 3 months is an opportunity for us to prove ourselves. Yeah. So actually, if a client didn't want to work with us after 3 months, I would never hold them to it. Right. I'm yet to have a single client say, "Oh, I don't want to work with you after 3 months." Don't put that out there. You'll get some awkward bugger doing it. But anyway, okay, yeah. That's a great testament again, isn't it? To have the confidence in your own service to be able to do that, I think is really putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing that the client had said to me was, so hang on a minute. So if I sign up now for the next 3 months, it's going to cost me basically just over 300 quid for you to take all those calls that I don't want to do. So it's going to cost me basically a round of drinks each week so that you can take all my calls. None of my staff have to do it. We don't have to worry about it. You'll cover Christmas, you'll cover January and February, and then we'll take it from there and see if we want to carry on. Is that right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? Yeah. And it's it's testament again to the team out there and the team that come in evenings, nights and weekends, that's a very happy customer who's now recommended us to about 15 others.
I think the key thing for me is for the price of a night out, you can have a night out, without having to worry about anything, isn't it? So I know I tend to reduce everything down to that kind of level, but yeah, that's great. And don't worry, by the way, about mentioning him. We're GDPR exempt here at Kerfuffle, so we tend to play hard and loose. So it is available to all agents then, basically. There is no, because as long as, you haven't just got literally a handful of properties to make it worthwhile there, you've got a really cost-effective service that you can add into this into this list, kind of. And I'm guessing as well, it must really help out. I mean, agents are obviously finding recruitment so difficult at the moment anyway, that this gives them, again, a kind of ability to flex and scale before having to get the next person on.
It does, and on the recruitment side of it as well, when you tell somebody joining your property management team, your lettings team, that they don't have to take any out of hours calls,
hallelujah,
it's like, what? Hang on a minute, sign me up. In fact, we quite often joke when we talk to agents about, when they say, oh, I'm going to refer it to the team because we might pay them 30 quid a week or 35 quid a week to be on call, which is pretty standard in the industry. We've seen it quite a lot. When I always joke with them that if you ask that team, they'll tell you they'll pay you 35 quid a week so that they don't have to be on call.
So there's revenue streams everywhere.
There you go. Turn it into a profit-making exercise.
Exactly. Cool. Okay. And talk us through the types of agents that are using this at the moment, and if there's any stats from those guys to share as well. I mean, we love a stat here at Kerfuffle.
Yeah. So I think that the core ones is most agents don't realize that 80% of people don't leave voicemails. So the core thing there is there are probably 3 or 4 times as many out of hours inquiries coming to those agents that do use voicemails, because they come in and they think, oh, well, I've got 3 voicemails, I've had 3 out of hours calls. It's not always the case. We've got a client up in Southport, brilliant guy, Alan Jones at Curlet Jones, who, when he first joined us, it was purely maintenance he was bothered about. It's nice to have that cover for the maintenance, but the inquiries is a bit of a bonus. And he said probably get 1 or 2 calls a night at a push.
That was what he thought anyway. That's what he was kind of guessing.
Yeah, within the first month of working with us, which I think was actually more like 3 weeks, I think we'd captured 53 inquiries, and 38 of them were sort of sales and lettings inquiries that were viable, solid leads. So obviously, we had a chat about his usage because it was twice as high as he thought. And I've never seen someone so happy about having to spend more money, because he was just like, this is brilliant. I didn't realize how much business we were missing.
It's always an eye opener, that, isn't it? And I suppose it's how can you possibly measure something that you're missing already there? But without a shadow of a doubt, 99% of agents would underestimate the amount of lost business that's being left on the table, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. It's just one of those things where I guess when the lettings market, for example, was going crazy, that the number of inquiries you get per property is there's so many that actually you're not that focused on it. But when things do start to sort of steady out and slow down, it starts to become a bit more normal in terms of sort of coverage and interest. It's then that people start to notice the stuff that they lost and the stuff that maybe they could have had, and those perfect leads that have gone to another agent down the road. While there's plenty of business out there for everyone, we'd all like to have it for ourselves, as you would in any business. So it's a huge one that the 80% of people don't leave voicemails. And also, I touched on it before, 85% of boiler breakdown calls we can actually resolve with a video call, which is higher than I thought it would ever be.
That's actually video triage there, Alan, if you don't mind me saying. I'm a bit of an expert on this now. So
remote video triage, we call it, RVA.
Wonderful. Alan, I mean, obviously, you've got a fantastic, exciting business here, growing and everything else. One of the problems that does often come, though, is that growing pain stage, isn't there? So how are you planning on maintaining the levels of support and efficiency and everything else as this business grows at such a rate?
It's actually something I've written a bit of a rant on, which I'll be putting on LinkedIn soon.
Look forwards to it. I always like a rant.
I'm normally quite concise with what I write on LinkedIn, but it's one of these things where when I sit with a lot of agents and talk about what we do, they do constantly say, you've grown quite quickly. How are you going to maintain that level of service as you continue to grow? Because I expect we will do now. People always say it's difficult to maintain quality as you grow. It is to some degree, but it's not impossible. It's just expensive. And that for me is the thing that's often overlooked, is actually, if you let service levels slide as you grow, that's a choice that you've made to not reinvest into the business in other areas. So if you're having, drops in quality of the call handling skills of the people in there, well, you need to invest in more people or better training, external training, internal training, more resource. Again, if your average waiting time for people calling in is increasing dramatically as your portfolio grows, well, you're clearly not reinvesting into the right number of people and the right number of resource. So I think, for me, look, business owner, of course, at some point I'd love to retire on a beach in the Bahamas and not have to worry about money. But right now, for me, the focus is the people within the business, the clients we work with. And as we grow, everything we make just goes straight back into the business, into developing the people, developing the service. Even as a young business, we've been sort of obsessed with improvements, and the team out there will tell you it drives them up the wall. But middle of last year, we put in a new phone system that totally changed the way we handle calls, made us more efficient. Right. And if there are any bottlenecks in the process, I start to look at ways we can solve that. Tail end of December, you can imagine the number of call outs we managed and the number of issues that we had, and it was probably the first real acid test of scalability. Clients loved us. They had the best Christmas they've had in years.
They can enjoy themselves over that tricky period, rather than worrying about what ice is going to be doing to the pipes and everything else, isn't it? It's like,
honestly, if you ask any of our clients that we worked with before or during December when they joined us, because we had quite a flurry of people want to take on the service, as you can imagine, before Christmas. You ask all those clients what their experience was like in December, they were like, it was phenomenal. We had a great time. Like, you guys were great, communicated clearly, everything was really sort of informative. We got all the reports after call outs to say what had happened and what the justification for sending someone was. And I'm in the background going, we can do better. And that's not just me, that's actually our operations team as well. They're always looking for ways to do better. So
that's the culture, though, isn't it? They take it often comes from the top, but you need people carrying that through, don't they, as well? So I was just thinking about your analogy there, you in the Bahamas or whatever else. I could still imagine you taking a call and your missus obviously having a go. It's like on that basis.
I went to Cape Verde in November for my first proper holiday since starting the business.
Yeah, did you manage to do that? Yeah, you managed to get that work-life balance, yeah?
Well, I did sit on the beach for 2 days and do my new website. So
beautiful.
All I had to do was a bit of content.
Every other business owners just sat there nodding away, aren't they? Sort of agreeing with you,
yeah. I'm very, very proud of the website as well. It was a big investment, but I'm like a proud dad with it. So
I encourage anyone to go to it, isn't it? It's really, really good. And I mean, talking about it really honestly, what's the best thing about doing what you do? What do you love most about the whole business, about Propcall itself?
So I've worked for sales businesses before, and companies that have sold services that are good, solid, telecoms businesses that work for great, and commercial laundry businesses, and branding businesses and all sorts. And the service is good, and they've always provided a good level of service, but you would never be passionate about that supplier. You would never go, oh, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because of that work-life balance and all the efficiencies it brings and all that stuff, I genuinely feel like I can walk into most clients' offices and they'll go, oh, here he is, my favorite supplier, the extended part of our business. It's a real good feeling for me to know that we deliver that much value to people, that they genuinely feel like we are part of their team, and that we're solving. We talk about work-life balance, and it's become quite a big focus since COVID, especially. And the sort of mental well-being around it, and it's being able to give that to people, and not charging them the earth for it. It's not just unattainable because you don't have 1,000 properties, or you don't have 15 locations that you cover. It's very attainable for everyone of every size, and the sort of close relationship we have with all our clients is really good for me.
It's great to hear that. And you've got a wonderful niche there, haven't you? So I've heard of other kind of outsourced telephone services revolving around prospecting. And actually that can be a really difficult one sometimes to align with your existing teams. They perceive that they're taking some of they after their stock and their business and everything else. Where you are, though, you're only saving them hassle and efficiency, aren't they? Which is a wonderful area to be with, isn't it? So, okay, let's just summarize this there. So, look, obviously that improvement you just highlighted there in the work-life balance you give is one very, very tangible element there. The way you obviously work to make sure they never miss obviously an inquiry in the business again, massive point there. Reducing unnecessary contractor spending, keeping the landlords happy, still right at the top of your list. and what you do out of hours as well, how that impacts on their efficiency during the days. They're not getting dragged back into things, I would imagine, is the key element. So, the three main takeaways I take that I've learned from it really is, look, best practice for out of hours is, people aren't using voicemails, are they? That's one element there. Yeah. The importance of that, having that good customer service 24 hours a day, and that reputational benefit rather than the damage you could otherwise get is critical. And then that one you've really dovetailed into the business is, how great technology tied up with the right people can reduce those call out charges at the properties that they manage, and summarized all of that by saying, look, you've clearly got the reputational know-how, because am I right in saying is you look after about 65,000 units across the UK at the moment?
Yeah, it's quite bizarre to say that. I mean, I remember looking back and changing some of our marketing collateral to say we had 7,500 units under management, and being quite proud. And yeah, we manage over 65,000 units now. Up and down the country, we've got clients up in Aberdeen, we've got clients down in Cornwall.
So it makes no difference. There's no area that you won't cover, basically.
Nope. Our job is to, if it can be done remotely, over the phone, we can handle it, because ultimately those clients are the ones that provide us with their list of contractors, and if we feel we've got any sort of lack in that area, we will proactively go out and find suppliers to cover them, and reach those agreements. But we do have strong networks pretty much across every aspect of the country, so there is no geographical limits to where we can operate.
Great stuff. Right, okay, Aaron. I've learned a lot today. Actually, it's been really useful getting an understanding about what you do, and it seems to me such an essential service. It's fantastic. If anyone wants to get in contact with Aaron, by the way, you can just email him at aaron@propcall.com. Aaron spelled AARON at propcall.com. Of course, first and foremost, don't do that straight away, people. Go to the landing page on kerfuffle.com, go to Propcall itself, have a look at the further information on there, the testimonials. There's some great reviews that I've seen, and as I said, we were recommended from somebody who already used you, so that's great to hear. I think for today, I feel better, Aaron, knowing that people out there like you are looking after this wonderful industry.
Cheers, I would appreciate that. Well, it's yeah, I've got plenty of cans of Red Bull, so I'll do all the work. So everybody else can. You do
all the work. That's it. I'll tell you what, to make you feel better, I'll make sure you do actually get that pink merch out as well.
I'm looking forward to it. That'll be going on LinkedIn next to my rant.
There you go. That's perfect. Okay, matey. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Cheers, Simon.